This is Building Lifestyles, a show designed to help everyday Australians create a lifestyle that inspires them using property development strategies. On the show, you'll hear from everyday people changing their lives doing property development. You'll learn from their successes as well as some of the challenges they've faced along the way. We also talk to experts from a range of fields who share specialised techniques that you can use to accelerate your property journey. I'm your host, Amanda McEwen, and I'm the founder of The Rising Star Developer, and I'm really passionate about helping everyday Australians build lifestyle using property development. Welcome back to Building Lifestyles. Today we're in for a treat as we welcome a true design queen, Frances Cosway, founder and lead designer of White Pebble Interiors. With over a decade of experience, this super stylish lady has transformed numerous spaces into forever homes, emphasising sustainability and excellence. Beyond her impressive portfolio, Frances has personally crafted an award-winning sustainable home, showcasing her commitment to harmonising design with environment. Frances and a team of White Pebble Interiors don't just design spaces, they bring dreams to life. Whether you're a design enthusiast or a homeowner dreaming of your forever home, get ready to be inspired. We're about to delve into the art of creating homes that stand the test of time. So join me in welcoming the visionary Frances Cosway to Building Lifestyles. Welcome, Frances.
Oh, thank you, Amanda. I'm very humbled by that intro. Thank you so much. It's lovely. It's lovely to be here and so nice to chat with you today.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to our conversation because we've met through another program, the business mentoring program. And one thing that always sparked my interest, you were always so amazingly dressed. And I go, okay, what's Frances going to wear today? So your taste and your style is in your clothing too. So I thought, this lady, I've got to have a chat to her. And when I worked out your interior design, I went, okay, awesome. We've got to chat.
Oh, that's very kind. But I think I told you as well, though, that I was always in awe of what you were wearing. So looks like we were always on the lookout with each other of, oh, what's she wearing today? That's awesome. I wonder what it is. Anyway, that's lovely that we've got that appreciation.
Yes, absolutely. And when you're in a business environment, you got to try and look for some fun elements too, don't you?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Now, let's get into it. I'd love the listeners to be able to understand your journey in property, both from your business perspective and your personal perspective. So can you give us some insight into your journey?
I can. So I've bought my very first home when I was living in Amsterdam, actually. So I lived overseas for 12 years and I was 27 when I bought my first apartment in Amsterdam. They structure finance, they're completely different. So you can actually borrow 110% of the property value. So in effect, they encourage people to buy because they have such incredible I suppose, social housing over there that they really want people to buy. So you can actually claim your mortgage repayment as a tax deduction as well. So I was crazy not to take that on board and I borrowed 110%. The biggest regret I've ever had is selling that property. But that was the first one I bought. I bought it on my own and I renovated it before I even moved in. And that became my little oasis. My second home that I bought was in London. I actually sold the Amsterdam apartment to purchase the London property, and I bought it right before the GFC. But I bought with the intention that if anything happened, because again, I bought it on my own, if anything happened to me that I wasn't able to pay the mortgage in full living on my own, I bought a 2-bedroom place so that I could always get a lodger in if I needed to, which is pretty common in London anyway. I've held that property and it's now rented out. And I've held it because it's positively geared. It doesn't cost me any money. So that just basically sits there, probably needs another reno now. I also renovated that property before I moved in as well. What I found personally was if I didn't own a space, I couldn't really embrace and make it my own. And therefore, I never really settled in a location until I actually had a house that I could really I suppose from a creative perspective, make it my own. So I was limited with rental properties. So that's why I ended up buying these places as well. Amsterdam was the investment. I couldn't settle in London and it's like I have to buy my own place. So look, that sits there. Then I moved back to Australia and I bought my first home with my partner when I moved back in 2009, and we bought We bought with the intention of renovating. We bought on the premise of buying as big a block as possible. So we actually focused on buying in a bridesmaid suburb, and I'm sure that your listeners would understand the bridesmaid suburb concept. We were initially living in a rental property close to the beach. We couldn't afford to buy in that area. So I did a lot of research, a lot of spreadsheet analysis on the last 4 years of growth in the area that we wanted to be. And then we bought in a bridesmaid suburb where in the last 4 years, the growth there had outstripped where we wanted to be. So my husband had to entrust in me that this is what we needed to do. He didn't want to leave. He wanted that postcode. And I said, well, the only way we're going to be able to do this is to move into this growth where the growth is higher. And the intention actually was to stay, but we really missed where we were. So we subdivided. And we kept the front house and we built a new house at the back. What I think the magic was, we didn't realise it at the time, was to make it really easy for planning, we only did a single level property. We thought it would make it less hassle. We won't do a double story at the back. We'll just do a single level. Our neighbours had actually done exactly the same. He was a small scale developer, so we sort of used that as inspiration to just do a single level. What ended up happening was we ended up selling the back because we ended up putting my mum in the front, and that was going to give us a much better return anyway, so that we could build the forever home, which is what we did this year, 10 years ago. But the gold was single level. The suburb, the bridesmaid suburb, had escalated massively in growth. It was downsizers that wanted it because it was all one level. It was really well designed. It was big open plan living areas, 3 good sized bedrooms, and we actually had the biggest sale in that area for that type of property ever. So that was a really good windfall for us. I think it went for well over what we expected. And first-time buyers were absolutely totally priced out of it at the auction. It was just all downsizers that wanted it because there were hardly any available.
That's
So
amazing.
that's
And I love your
effectively
journey.
my journey.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
so
that's
that was
amazing.
a
Thank you. And what I love about that is you hadn't even intended as part of your journey to even do property development. Indirectly, you had done that and managed to create
correct.
some great returns just by subconsciously working out the highest and best use for your site. So I love that you've done that and it's helped you get it back into that suburb with a postcode and build your forever home. So I love that you've also used the concept of the bridesmaid. It's also called a ripple effect and certainly ripple suburb. And that is such a clever way of looking for sites as well where you can't afford particular areas, because you're right, quite often those areas are really hard to get into, don't grow as quickly as the ones just surrounding that. So your opportunity for
Absolutely.
growth and being creative with those sites really bears fruit like it has for you, which is
Yeah, and it really has. And it was nice. I didn't say it in these words, but it was nice to be able to say to my husband, it worked. See, we just needed to move out for a while. You got back into the area that you wanted to. And there is no way that we would have been able to build the forever home that we did if we hadn't have done that dual lock. And the other thing that happened was this wasn't the plan. We planned to sell the back house, which we actually moved into, so we didn't have to pay capital gains either. We lived in the front, we lived in the back. We sold the back, and we sold it because there was going to be an enormous development at the back, and that was going to affect all the light. It was 3 on a block, and it was really tight, and it was going to kill all the light. So we actually sold while we were building the forever home and moved into what we've always now termed the in-between house for 6 months. That was not the intention. It was to sell it once we would move straight from that back house into our other house. However, the advantage was we had no idea of the windfall that we were going to make on selling that rear property. And I'm so glad we did it, because it enabled us to do things in the forever home that we would never have thought we'd be able to afford, things that you only get one crack at doing. That we were then able to afford to do. So that was really gold, that a real gold moment that I didn't expect or plan for.
That's great. There's a couple of key messages that I'm hearing from what you're saying, and especially for people who are looking to buy their first home or the second home and can't quite get into the suburbs they want to. I think it's important to realize you don't necessarily have to have everything now. If you have a plan that you can actually try and do something on the side or move on the outskirts with your longer term vision of working towards your dream home, because what probably would have happened had you bought in that suburb right now and geared yourself to the eyeballs, you probably may not have had that flexibility to then build your version of your dream home with the level of debt you would have had if you tried to get into that suburb to begin with.
That's exactly right. We would have been living in it. We wouldn't have been able to buy enough land to be able to dual lock. We would have been living in a townhouse or a unit to live in the postcode that my husband was really keen on. I was looking more long term. And look, he came along on the journey, and it was really beneficial for us in the end. But yeah, you've got to have the long term. And I know that you talk about this a lot. Look at what your long term goals are, because there's steps to get there. Not everyone's going to do this overnight. You have to plan.
Yeah.
And it's the steps to get to that forever home or whatever it is that your goal is.
Yeah, so let's talk about the forever home, because after you've now got to build a whole business around building your forever home. So what inspired you to channel your focus in creating forever homes and specifically the concept of future proofing homes as well? I find that really interesting.
So the forever home concept, I suppose, evolved out of my own experience, but also I found that clients were actually referring to these houses that they were planning to live in for 10 plus years, which is really a forever home is defined as a home that you're intending to stay in. We never know what the future holds, but the intention is I'm going to stay here for 10 plus years. So it came from my own experience, and I realized that when we did the dual lock, all the choices that I made there were totally different than what they were for the forever home, the house that we were going to stay in. And the future proofing, I'll touch on the forever home first. So it's the choices that you make are very, very different. And then I saw my clients go through a very similar process, and they were referring to them, and I did as well, as this is my forever home. I'm intending to stay here. So that's where the name came from. But the emotional buy-in for a forever home, and this is the absolute core difference, is totally different. Now, I actually call that an emotional ROI. When you're building a home that you plan to stay in, the choices that you make, be it the floor plan as well as the materials and everything else, even down to the colors, they really, and this is what I encourage my clients and give them permission to do, that it is around creating something that is all about you. It's about your life story. It's about things that you want to be surrounded by. When you're doing a development, it's a different, you're pitching it to the market. What are buyers after? What is this particular area after? When it's a forever home, you absolutely toss that all in the garbage because it's all about you. And it's quite challenging sometimes with clients to get their head around, I need to, I'm going to make this about me, that I am going to have a teal colored bedroom, or I am going to have, if I reference a client, her teal is her favorite color, as is mine. She's got teal colored vanities in her ensuite because she wants to be surrounded by things that make her happy. So that's where the emotional connection is so different than a development. And that's why I work exclusively with people doing a forever home, because that's where I get my buzz, that we are creating homes that someone goes, oh my goodness me, I love my house so much. And that's how you should be feeling. It's not about what the market's after. It's all about you, 100% about you. Then so it's a different mindset than building to sell. The future proofing is really important with a forever home as well, but I also think it's important for developments. And this is where a floor plan is created around adaptability and flexibility, so that a home is able to be, well, rooms are able to be more than one thing at any one given point in time. It could also be that they are multifunctional. For example, you may have a sofa in a study that when people come and stay, very rarely that sofa can be that sofa bed can be rolled out and someone can stay there. You can move your laptop into the dining room while they're staying. So it's about, for example, second living rooms may be a playroom while your kids are young. That may be a spare room at some stage. It may be a study for kids that are doing year 12 at some stage. But the idea is that the floor plan is able to work super hard and you're not creating all these additional rooms, which of course cost money, you can actually you do more with less, and that you are able to adapt as your family's life change. Little kids are totally different than having teenagers. So your house needs to be able to work super hard to allow for all of those changes.
And I love that, because that's exactly the journey that I've been on the last couple of years. I've been fortunate to be able to build my forever home about 3 years ago, which, so behind me, you can see this is actually my living room. And I went through the same process, right? As a developer, I'm very much of the mindset of creating a product that's more generic, still livable and amazing, and suits the area and the demographic, but it's not as specific as what I've created for myself. And I know that I had the same thing, and I was very fortunate to work with an interior designer like yourself to help me bring my vision to life, so that as I walk through every single room, I've created spaces that inspire me, because I work from home. So I want to make sure that the spaces that I have and the environment that I've got around me makes me feel great, because then that transfers into my work as well. And we're the same. We've gone with teenagers. So when we first moved in here, they all wanted to, we're all on the middle level. We've got a 3-story house. We're on the top level with my office, and then our living space, which is behind me, and kitchen. And then down below is the 3 bedrooms with the children and activity room. And a couple of years ago, when we first moved in, everyone was in the middle level. But we were thinking ahead, because we knew we were heading into the teenage years, which we're in right now. And now the girls are on the bottom level. They want to be, they're in their bedrooms all the time, away from us. They've got their own activity room with all their mates that come over. And then in my office, my husband, we've got my office, but we've also got a slash man cave, where he can go up there and watch his footy, get away from all the girls in the house, and have his space too. So you were so right. The concept of future proofing is so important. But also being able to, I'm so grateful to be able to build my forever home, because it's something that I never thought that I'd be able to do 10 years ago, before I started property development. And I'm also getting to see a number of my students who are going on that journey, because quite often when people embark upon the property development journey, it's to get rid of their current debt on their own home. But that own home isn't necessarily their dream home. It's a stepping stone. And when you get the finances to be able to then work towards that dream home and build something that is just for you, it is such a special experience. So I completely get what you do and why you do it.
Yeah, and that's what gives me joy, which is why it really is. We've niched really hard and just work with people that are doing that. And look, to your point, a forever home is not your first home. It might be, we're working with clients, it might be their second, third, or fourth home that they're finally able to be able to do that for themselves. And it doesn't need to be big. It's all about suiting their lifestyle. So yeah, and I think the floor plan, though, this future proofing concept, it can really be applied to developments as well. It's around what's going to make your floor plan be more applicable to more people. And that's about having a lot of flexibility in how those rooms, or what those rooms can be. So one of the things that I'm really against, if I can share this, is that I have an absolute bugbear for them. Upstairs retreats with 0 doors. So I am a queen of doors, because the doors give you so much flexibility, and they serve a whole lot of other things that people are not aware of. We live in this age of everything must be open planned. So retreats for me upstairs that are open really cut off a lot of the flexibility that we're talking about. So for example, in my own home, we don't have a retreat upstairs that's open. We have it actually as a separate, well, it could be a bedroom. So it's got doors. It could be a retreat. It could be a spare room. It's actually my husband's study at the moment / spare room. We had an au pair for a period of time that she had it. But if we had have just had that space at the top of the stairs as a retreat, it couldn't have been any of those things, because we needed doors to be able to create privacy. And I think that's something that people really forget about, is how do I create privacy? Well, you can't without doors. So think about how doors are going to apply to your floor plan to create an immense amount of flexibility later on.
Yeah, and I certainly hear you there. The challenge from a developer perspective, because I go through this time and time again, right, with designing floor plans, because I always put myself in the shoes of someone who's living there. I'm not just looking at a design. I'm thinking about, okay, if I was a buyer, how would I live in this space? And perhaps this is a female thing, right? Your kitchen, how is it all placed out? And I do that same thing for my developments, even though I'm creating affordable product. But one of the biggest challenges I have, and this comes from a planning perspective, right, is I get in terms of being able to have that closed off space, because yeah, you're right. At least it becomes multifunctional. It can be a living space, it can be a bedroom, it can be an office, what have you. But from a planning perspective, what a lot of councils view that as that being another bedroom. And then what that does from a development perspective, it means that you have to have additional car parking. So I had this issue a number of years ago with one of my
Yes.
sites where it was going to be a 2-bedroom / potential 3-bedroom house. So at the top of the stairs, we had a space where we could convert it into a bedroom if we needed to. But council was so against that, because then it affected the number of car parks that I could have on a site, that they made us change our whole stairway so that that room at the top of the stairs could not be converted into a bedroom. And that's the challenge you have as a developer,
It
because
is.
you're trying to create these spaces that are livable. And I'm going through that same challenge at the moment with another deal that I'm working on. But you've got council being so restrictive on the planning guidelines around car parking in particular, that then restricts the space that's livable anyway. So yeah, I get where you're coming from,
It
but
is
that's
a
the
real
balance we've had.
challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And that it obviously depends on the councils as well, and
yeah.
all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the car parking issue, and let's not even start about turning circles,
Oh my God.
is
I'm doing that
is
right now as
so
well.
yeah, not fun. Yeah, so anyway, that's where that's that whole future proofing concept, which just for me goes hand in hand with the forever home concept.
Yeah, that sounds great. So what I'd love to know is, can you share some of the common challenges clients face when they're starting a new build or renovation, and how you guide them through this process?
It's a really good question, this one. And I think I think one of the biggest things, and the number one thing I hear people say when they call me is, I am just so overwhelmed. I didn't realize that there were going to so many things that I had to decide on. I know what I like, but I don't know how to bring it to life. I don't know how to create that vision. So I think this overwhelm, and then also not understanding the process, that can really trip people up. They think that they just get a builder or an architect and get a quote, and then, yep, that's all going to be done, and not understanding the process. Even just the build processes can really be very challenging for people. But the number one thing that I see clients face is that overwhelm of, am I going to spend all this money and it's not actually going to be what I envisaged it was going to be? And they don't understand the time involved in making all these decisions. I think that's another one, is the time involved along every, at every step of the journey is great. It's not just a set and forget. You really need to be involved, but there's definitely a lot of planning that can be done that can really assist with minimising just how much stress there is also during that whole process.
Yeah, and I think also, especially if you're not in the business of building and designing like we are, I find that a lot of people also have issues picturing what something's going to look like. So you can go into a
Yes,
store and choose the tiles and the vanity and all this sort of tapware and all that sort of stuff, but a lot of people don't have the idea of how that's all going to come together. And that's where
no,
certainly someone like yourself adds a huge amount of value, because you know how it all pieces together and what the end design is going to look like, rather than just the individual tile or the individual tap. And I guess that's where a lot of the overwhelm is created, right? Because everyone's
yes.
going, oh my God, am I making the right decision? And I've got to live
Mm.
with these tiles, and I've got to live with this vanity, and but not knowing how it's all going to gel together.
And that is that visualization piece. And look, it's, you've either got it or you don't, and there's
Mm.
nothing wrong with that. There's heaps of skills that I don't have. So that visualizing, I can see how that tile's going to go with this really easily. So it's about surrounding yourself with either getting the tools that can assist you with visualization. We use a lot of 3D to show, our visualization to our clients so they can see more realistically what that's going to look like. But I cannot tell you how many times I hear people say, I walk into a tile shop and I walk straight back out, because it's like, I don't even know where to start. Or they start with one tile and then it's like, oh, but how am I going to know that this is going to go with this? And then, and then I've got to choose all these other things. And it's like, and then it just all falls apart. And I think probably the materials part, particularly hard materials, is possibly the area that people feel is going to be the easiest. Oh, I know what I like, so I'm going to be able to choose that stuff really easily. Until they start doing it and they realize, one, how time consuming it is, where do you even know where to go? But it's about working with color and tone. Actually, tone is where I see things really get mixed up, is using the wrong color tones together, the base tone. That's where I see it all going a bit pear-shaped, cools and warms going together. But the materials is really complicated, and there's a lot to be chosen, and it's that overwhelm. I think it's that really is the number one thing that people are ringing. I'm so overwhelmed, I just can't bring it. Can't do it.
Yeah, and I've got certainly, excuse my dog barking in the background. He always knows the perfect time to start barking when someone comes near the door. But
Mine will be next.
what I also find, right, is having had worked with an interior designer on my forever home, and when you walk into a home that's had someone with your skills involved, it has a whole different feel to it. It just flows,
Yeah,
and it's got this warmth that you can't quite pinpoint. And that's where your skills are just so magnified in terms of the end product. And it's not too dissimilar to development. I guess with the forever home, you're tailoring it to somebody else's individual needs, but you're also still creating that warmth and that flow into their home. And that same concept still does apply to development as well, because I've walked through some developments,
absolutely.
other people's, and gone, oh my God, this place just feels disjointed.
Clinical.
Yeah, and clinical. Yeah,
Clinical,
exactly. So
disjointed. It's got no soul to it.
it's got no,
And it can be
yeah,
styled within an inch of its life, but the materials, and this is where the tone is so important. And look, this will be a whole other podcast, but the tone is so important, because if those things are jarring, it doesn't feel right. And look, that is actually the number one question we ask our clients. How do you want to feel in the space? Don't tell me about, colors is one thing, and oh, I need this space, and I need, no, just tell me how you want to feel when you walk through the door. And then often they'll talk about that, but they'll also talk about how they want other people to feel when they come into the home. Relaxed, calm. They're probably the biggest descriptors that we get, that people don't feel that it's too precious. These are the things that make a home feel like a home. And you're right, whether it's a development or not, you still want to feel those things.
yeah. And I think that's where it's important. And you're right, not everyone has those skills to be able to put all those specifications and that feel together. And I certainly educate my students in terms of, you build your A team around you. And if you have the skills like yourself there and you love doing that, then you can do that piece of the puzzle. But if you don't, just get somebody with those skills and to do it for you, because
Yeah.
it's going to pay huge dividends by getting that right at your design phase and thinking, okay, I've got to, you might think, okay, I'm going to create either your home or a development, and you love bright pink tiles, right? Because that makes you feel great. But you got to remember you're designing for somebody else, and you've almost got to take your own. It's not your forever home. It's a home for other people. So the choices are a bit different, but you still need that combination of flavors of feeling, so that somebody walks into that development as well and feels like it's a home too. So and that's why I always say to my students, if you don't like doing design or you can't do that, just get a designer to do it for you, and it'll pay dividends, that's for sure.
It does also, because you also, from a development perspective, don't want it to look super cookie cutter. People want to have a home that feels a little bit unique, even if they're not designing it themselves. So there's that part. But also, in terms of paying dividends, you just have to look at how it goes wrong, and how, they've chosen bench tops that are not working with the splashbacks, or cabinetry that's not working. And it just looks wrong. And people can see that. Don't think they can't see it. They can see those mistakes. And that's where it'll pay dividends. It'll be, this is on the market and that's on the market. Look how much nicer this one is, and how the feeling is compared to the other one. So you're
Yeah, for
absolutely
sure.
right with that. Yeah.
That leads us into planning. So what do you think are the key elements when you're planning a forever home or a home for somebody else to live in?
You said it already. It's the A team. That A team is critical to your success. But it's not about getting the A team in dribs and drabs. It's about getting them, particularly for your forever home, early on in the piece. So the core four for me are your architect or draftsman, whatever you're going down, your builder, your landscaper, and your interior designer. If those four are engaged really early on, they need to be working together. They're sharing their expertise. but also, let them use their expertise. You've paid them, you're paying them for a reason. So really listen to what they've got to say. But sometimes, again, what I was talking about before, that people say, oh, I can go down the tile shop and I can do this and I can do that. But sometimes an interior designer, for example, can show you materials that you didn't even know existed, or this is where we can spend and this is where we can save. But they're looking at flow. They're looking at the impact of windows on furniture layout. The architect's not necessarily looking at that. A landscape is going to be looking at different things as well. So when you're looking at the whole site as a whole, you can see how all the pieces come together, so that the whole thing is done in totality rather than getting the landscaper in, for example. And I see this happen all the time. Just before we're going to move in, let's get the lawn done. And there might be a whole heap of other considerations that are going to really impact that site that could make it so much nicer if they were engaged earlier on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So can you just share, sorry, how do you help clients determine the right products and materials for their home while trying to balance like functionality and aesthetics, but also a budget?
Mm-hmm. So the first thing that we do is we actually get, and I said that to you just before, what's the feeling you want to create? So that's going to have a really big impact on the materials that we'll be using and colors and so forth. But it's getting a really good understanding of lifestyle, the life stage that they're at, but then also anticipating what life stages may be coming. Definitely colors, likes and dislikes. This can also be different between the partners as well. Functionality, maintenance, and durability requirements are also really, really important. There's no point having the most incredible looking product, let's call it marble, for example, and then it's not going to meet your durability or maintenance requirements. So we really delve into that. And that's also then linked with lifestyle. And then we are very direct. We will be asking about what the budget is for the entire build, because that allows us to pitch. We know what sort of supplies that we would need to be looking at, what sort of materials we need to be looking at to make sure that it's going to be fitting in with their overall build cost. So we do that with a really detailed briefing session, and I'm pretty firm with it. Both parties need to be there, and sometimes they'll bring in their older children and so forth. But we sometimes hear that whole, oh, but my partner's not going to be making any decisions. He's not interested. Whenever we have the briefing meeting, you can absolutely be guaranteed that it might just be one comment, and we need to make sure that that is used, and then they're engaged, and they're going to love this home so much more because they just had that one piece of involvement. So that's really, really important, is that briefing session. I'm sort of sensing that you may have experienced this yourself.
Oh my goodness,
But
yes. We
it's
had a
so
conversation about our
important.
husbands, haven't we? And yeah, I laugh because when we were building my forever, our forever,
Yeah.
I had this vision of, quite like the charcoals, as you can see, sort of behind me. And we were talking about our kitchen layout. And I think this is also something when you're building a dream home, for people to consider as well, when you've got to factor in another person. And sometimes it takes them a journey, because I remember we spoke to an interior designer to begin with, and I was like, no, we're not having a black kitchen. We're not having anything black in our house at all. He wanted white and very simple, and we had white in our previous home. Anyway, I reckon it wasn't until we actually found our builder and started working with the interior architect designer with our builder that he finally got to visualize what I was trying to create. He couldn't picture it. And then anyway, we've now got quite a lot more charcoal around than I anticipated. And he loves it now, but it took him a while to go on that journey. And that's where someone like yourself is also incredible, right? Because you're almost a bit like a marriage counselor, because
I
you're
was just about to say I am a marriage counsellor. Because for me, though, I'm not going to be siding with anyone. I will be then providing impartial advice on. So if we go down this path, we need to consider this, this, and this. These are the advantages and disadvantages going down this route. If we go down this other path, we need to consider this and this. So then they've got the information, and then they can go away and talk about it and come to a decision, which is clearly, I think, what happened with you. But that's really important. But if you don't have someone engaged to even give you that information, how are you ever going to be able to make an informed decision that's then going to work? I think that's the other piece, or at least we do that. I'm passionate about this, is educating my clients about the materials themselves and why we're suggesting one over another, so that they go, oh yeah, I know now why I'm choosing this product. This is going to work for me because of X, X, and X, rather than, well, this is looking good and I was told by the guy in the shop that it was great. We are completely impartial. So that's another thing that's completely off your question, but yeah, that's another thing to consider with it that helps you make decisions,
Yeah, and I
particularly
think
when you've
that's
got your
where
partner
also,
involved.
yeah, for sure. And I think that's where the magnitude of the investment, getting someone like yourself involved, right? Because when you're building a house, suddenly you're hit with all these different cost components, and you're looking at, you bought the land and you're looking at the build, and the build quote keeps on going up and up and up, and you're thinking about landscaping, and if you're putting a pool in, and suddenly your budget just blows out. And some people can think, okay, well, hang on a sec, if I've got to then pay for an interior designer, that's taking an X amount of my
That's right.
budget to go towards the house, but it's not actually a cost. What people need to realize is actually the investment, and that investment in having that guidance is going to pay dividends, certainly in terms of the flow of the house. And you're spending all this money on the build, right? You want to make sure that build is actually creating something that's going to help you with that feeling, right? And your expertise in terms of the cost component, so working within a budget, by the time you actually incorporate your expertise with design elements, they're actually going to end up saving more money than they've spent in design anyway. So I think that sometimes lost in translation when people are building a home, and people need reminding of that too.
Absolutely. And I think that also comes down to the designer as well. You absolutely need to find someone that clicks with you, that you really know that you can trust them. They're going to be working with you for quite a long time through the journey. So that's really important. And look, there's a lot of, I hear it all the time on the phone as well. There's, some good operators, and then there's some not so good operators that are a little bit dishonest. So you've really got to find someone that has got the runs on the board that can help you with that, and it's absolutely then an investment. You just don't realize that at the time until you've gone through the process, and that's one of the issues. They haven't experienced an interior designer before, so it's like, oh, I can do this myself, until they've actually experienced it, and then it's like, I could never do this again without. So, and just one thing, going back to your question about, how do we help determine the right products and so forth. Sometimes people get a little bit nervous when we're having a briefing meeting, because they've got to articulate in words, what are the things I like and dislike. And we have a little briefing questionnaire that goes out before, and we know the questions to ask. They don't even have to prepare really. And then they'll get it returned as a written document that they can review. But the other thing to think about for yourself, and this could also be for your developments, is that curation of a Pinterest board about the things that you like. And it mightn't even be the entire space. It's like, I love this, I love this cabinetry color, but I don't really like anything else in the space. If you've got a collection of that stuff, you really know what's resonating for you. As designers, we can look at that and I can see the themes, and they don't even need to give me the words. I can see it in the images. As I say, a picture tells 1,000 words. So that's another way. It doesn't have to be articulated in words. It can be articulated in different ways. And that's how we're able to get under the skin of what our clients want.
And that's once again the huge value that you bring to the whole process of designing your home, that's for sure. So it sounds like you've been the author of your Forever Home, and you've also done some collaborative events with companies like Reese and National Home Show. So with your book and also the collaborations, how does that benefit people seeking guidance in home design?
So with the book, I suppose the book Your Forever Home is something I wrote, I think it's 5 years ago now. And that really is a handbook. So it's not an interior design book that, sits on a coffee table. It is a book that my intention is that you dog ear it, you put, you turn the corners of the pages, you highlight it. It really is, it gives you, I suppose, similar to what I was talking about before, understanding what the processes are. So the reason I actually wrote the book is because clients kept saying to me, what's something that I can use to help me understand the process of what I'm going to be experiencing? And I went looking for a book that I could refer to my clients, and I realized that there wasn't one there. So then that's why I ended up writing it. So some of the key things that are in there, for example, are, what are the stages of a build? What's roughing mean? What happens at frame stage? What happens at lock-up stage? It's terminology that people wouldn't know if you've never done it before. So, all those stages, what does it mean? What can you expect? How can you prepare for it? Those sorts of things are in the book. Even things back to, should I renovate or build? What are the advantages and what should you consider going down both those paths? And another one just quickly is, what are the different sort of materials available to you, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of those? So you can sort of start doing your own research. So really it's a book to set you up before you even start the process.
Amazing. And certainly with knowledge, that's going to help you make the whole process a lot less painful as well. Knowledge
Yes,
is key, and
yeah.
certainly having the right team around you.
Who
It
do you
sounds
need on your
amazing.
team? How do I brief them? All that sort of stuff's in the book as well.
Yeah, okay, sounds great. So for somebody contemplating new build or renovation, what would be your top piece of advice, of course, outside of reading your book, to ensure a seamless and stress-free process?
Um, As I mentioned before, it's going to be getting your A team together. Now, obviously, with a development, there's more people in that A team than what you need than if you're just creating your forever home. One thing, it's not just about the interior designer piece being regarded as an investment that you mentioned before. One of the other things that I see people really skimp on is underestimating the value of internal elevation drawings. Now, this is where the real heavy lifting is on creating the functionality in a space. And it's a very different approach than seeing on a floor plan, here's a space that's been allocated for your kitchen. And then you talk to a cabinet maker when the build started. That is a completely different scenario than doing that all before you've even engaged, or you've even started the build, you've even poured the slab. But this is where you're going to get the functionality and the design designed around you, what you need to store, how you need to store things, how often do you need to access it. That's a very different approach to design. And that comes out in the internal elevations if you're doing them before you actually start the building process. It's a lot more valuable than working with a cabinet maker on site because we're taking into consideration a whole lot of other different things. Just as an example, just yesterday we're working on a project where we've got the floor plans back from the draftsman and we're looking at the kitchen and they need oodles of storage and the window is slap bang in a location that's going to then not allow us to have overhead storage. So we've now had an engagement with the draftsman and said, okay, is there an issue with us moving this window and changing the size of this window? Because it means that we're going to be able to deliver something far more functional for our client because of that. You can't do that on site. The window's in. It's far too late. And this is the piece that I see is hugely undervalued, and is what I would say is a top piece that you can't miss out on are the internal elevations. And
Yeah.
many people view them as a cost rather than an investment because you can make really informed decisions on paper and move things around, which is far cheaper than saying to Mr. Builder, I need you to pull that cabinet down now because I'm going to change its location.
Yeah,
Don't
that's
underestimate the
expensive.
value of those.
Yeah, and I've been caught out with that as well in a past project many, many years ago, where I didn't see the joinery layouts before they got sent to the factory. And so on site, these kitchens got built. And then I was walking around these kitchens and went, hang on a second, there was no chest of drawers in there in these houses. And if I'd seen which is ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, and that's clearly someone who hasn't actually understood the joinery designer should have picked that up. But that's where you need someone to run their eyes over it just to make sure those livability criteria. And if you didn't do the joinery layouts so actually even see them yourself, it wouldn't get picked up, and it didn't get picked up. So we then had to do a workaround on site, which ended up being costly and
It's
painful.
pricey.
And yeah,
It's
could have been avoided
pricey.
if it had been reviewed.
You're minimizing your variations. Your builder's going to love you because you look super organized. He knows you're actually allowing yourself to have a lot more control of the outcome. And
Yeah.
this is the bit that people miss. You can control, you can see exactly what your builder's going to create. He knows what your expectations are. That's only going to give you a better relationship. So that is the absolute number one thing that I think is missed a lot. I'm going to do the materials myself. I don't need the drawing. I'm going to talk to the cabinet maker on site. You lose a lot of control in that regard. So we do it all the time. So we're going to give you advice about where to have storage, logical storage that, again, people are not thinking about because they don't know.
Yeah, you
And I'm
don't
not
know,
expecting
do
them to
you?
know. So I get a bit of a bee in my bonnet. You can hear it about internal elevations. I talk about it a lot at home shows as well. And
Yeah.
I can show people the difference about what it's like with and without. Shop drawings, which is what the cabinet maker has, is very different to internal elevations.
Yeah, okay,
So,
that makes sense. So you may have already covered this with your tip just then, but what's one tip
mm,
you can give to our listeners that they can take away and apply to their own projects right away?
Really, really spend the time at floor plan stage to get them right. I see so many clients or people that contact me. I've got a floor plan. I just want to get started. I just want to move into this house. You get one crack at your floor plans, review them again. The floor plan's king. If you don't have a good floor plan, your house is not going to serve you. It's not going to work for you, and you're going to get really, really frustrated. And it's so expensive to do this. So spend the time on paper. It's very easy to move walls. It's very easy to change things on a floor plan than to change it on site. So it's going to save you a lot of money by really getting the floor plan right. I also suggest getting a second set of expert eyes. If you don't feel confident in this regard, I actually do a floor plan sanity check for this purpose, is to have a second set of eyes that's completely removed from the project, that can look at it impartially and advise on, look, have you considered this? Have you considered that? So spend the time on the floor plans and again with your elevations to get them right. It'll save you so much money and so much time.
And it's so important. It's one thing that I do in Submariner Circle is we have a, inside our Facebook group, we have a share your floor plan post that comes up regularly where everyone can put their floor plans on and get feedback from other perspectives. Because you're right, you can be picturing something yourself, but you get another set of eyes over it and they'll be picking up and providing suggestions you hadn't even thought of. So that is so important. Yep, I definitely highly recommend that as well.
Slow down and get the floor plan right. There's no awards for getting out of the goalpost first with the house and then living with the regrets of, oh, if only this room was a little bit bigger or we didn't think about this or that. So I'm always slowing clients down to really work on the floor plan first. So important.
That sounds amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been incredible being able to get behind the scenes and into the headspace of how you help your clients for your forever home, but there's so many takeaways that can equally be applied to development as well. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your generosity, sharing your expertise with the community. And we'll certainly put in the show notes, if you're very lucky enough to build your forever home, have a chat to Frances and she can share her wealth of knowledge with you to make sure that you create a home that feels right for you as well. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks, Amanda.
Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening. This is Building Lifestyles, a show designed to help everyday Australians create a lifestyle that inspires them using property development strategies. This podcast was produced by the Rising Star Developer. We've been helping Australians realise their financial and lifestyle goals since 2020. We play a pivotal role in educating, supporting and celebrating the goals and successes of our students and our community. To find out how we can help you realise your property, wealth and lifestyle goals, head to our website www.risingstardeveloper.com.au. To make sure you don't miss an episode of Building Lifestyles, be sure to subscribe to and follow the show in your favourite podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review as it really helps others find the show. I'm Amanda McEwen and we'll be back next episode with more tips on how you can build your lifestyle.